Rapprochez un peu, s'il vous plaît. Oui, resserrez-vous et un pas en avant.
Voilà, merci.
Et par ici, s'il vous plaît. Voilà.
Et tous ensemble ici au centre, s'il vous plaît. Milieu, au milieu.
Voilà, ici, en bas.
Et juste à gauche, s'il vous plaît.
And to the center, please. To the center right here. En bas, en bas. Ici, s'il vous plaît.
I'm here.
Face à vous ensemble, s'il vous plaît.
Et juste à gauche aussi.
Parfait. Il manque juste le regard par ici.
Olivier. Vincent, s'il vous plaît.
Merci.
Ici au milieu. Merci. Lynn, s'il vous plaît.
Vous faire un pas en avant, s'il vous plaît. Oui,
Vincent, qui regarde aussi, s'il vous plaît.
Voilà, voilà.
Vincent, ici.
Vincent, s'il vous plaît. Vincent, ici.
J'étais presque.
Qui regarde.
S'il vous plaît. Nora.
Could you please hold
Voilà, s'il vous plaît.
Could you please, one step forward. Please come a little bit forward. And please, to the center.
Voilà, comme ça, s'il vous plaît.
Would you kindly...
Oui, bien comme ça.
Et avec
Voilà, par ici, s'il vous plaît. Tous ensemble. Merci.
Merci.
Ici ensemble, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, s'il vous plaît.
Un par un, là.
Oui, je parle.
Je vous laisse. Salut.
Ça va.
Partez pas tous, hein.
Un pas en avant, s'il vous plaît.
Partez pas tous.
Want to do the center here?
Regardez ici au milieu, juste au-dessus. En haut.
Si, voilà, parfait.
Olivier, ici,
Olivier ici au milieu.
Olivier, par ici, s'il vous plaît.
Olivier, s'il vous plaît. Ici. Voilà. Olivier, s'il vous plaît. Ici. En face. Là.
Would you kindly...
Ici, en face. Ici. Olivier, par ici, s'il vous plaît.
Et encore une.
Olivier, aussi, ici.
Et une dernière ici aussi.
Olivier, the two made actors, Misha and Vincent, can you make a picture with Olivier? You three, and then the portrait.
Voilà, alors, faites un pas en avant, s'il vous plaît.
With the boys.
Par ici, s'il vous plaît. Voilà, par ici.
Ici.
Olivier ensemble, s'il vous plaît.
Tous ensemble ici au centre, s'il vous plaît.
Tous les trois ici. Ici, s'il vous plaît.
Ici au milieu.
Voilà, par ici.
Ensemble au milieu, au milieu, au milieu.
Une heure comme ça, là, s'il vous plaît.
Alors, on va laisser Vincent tout seul faire des portraits, puis on fait les...
Could you please... I'm sorry.
Voilà, un pas.
Perfect.
Vincent, on va commencer par...
Un petit regard sur la gauche.
Vincent, ici. Vincent, on est là. Vincent,
C'est là, elle est juste ici en face. Vincent, regardez-moi.
concentrez-vous sur le son de la voix, Vincent, voilà, je suis là. Voilà, Vincent.
Vincent, s'il te plaît, ici.
Et encore ici à droite, s'il vous plaît, au centre. Vincent, s'il vous plaît. Juste là. Vincent, s'il vous plaît.
Regardez-moi. Vincent. Tu regardes, Vincent, par ici. Voilà, pointez-moi du doigt. Vincent.
Okay, need alone. So need. Oh.
Avance un petit peu. Voilà, par ici. Attendez, voilà.
Lynn, s'il vous plaît.
S'il vous plaît.
Lynn, je suis prêt.
Et regardez ici, voilà, ici en bas.
Et le petit regard qui fait juste là. Voilà.
Sur la gauche.
Vous êtes un peu
Voilà, mais c'est bon.
Regardez-moi s'il vous plaît.
Voilà, regardez là.
S'il vous plaît. En bas.
What's about the right leg? One more test.
S'il vous plaît. Ici.
Un petit, Lynn, s'il vous plaît.
Let's go. Avec Lynn. Pour les deux.
Par ici, en bas. Oui.
Faut l'embrasser aussi.
Ici, en bas.
Voilà, sur la
Et
gauche.
juste ici au centre, s'il vous plaît.
Une autre à nouveau ici, en bas.
Et juste la gauche, s'il vous plaît. Ici, sur la gauche.
Ici, en bas.
Regardez-moi ici en haut au milieu, s'il vous plaît. Ah, baissez le menton.
Monsieur, juste la gauche.
Vincent, ça fait des...
What about the right leg?
Ici, en bas.
Et encore ici en face.
Thank you.
C'est vite.
Nora, par ici.
Nora, s'il vous plaît, au centre.
The right leg.
Nora, s'il vous plaît.
Voilà, sur la gauche.
Nora.
Voilà, regarde.
Ok, Nora.
Nora, par ici, s'il vous plaît. En bas, ici.
Nora, sur la gauche. Voilà.
Juste ici en bas. Voilà, le petit regard.
Nora, ici, en bas. En bas. Nora, en bas.
Et encore ici pour moi.
Et une dernière ici.
Nora, s'il vous plaît. Nora, ici. Nora.
Juste la gauche, s'il vous plaît.
On revient sur un petit regard.
Un petit regard à
Un
droite.
petit regard, voilà.
Et ici, en bas. Voilà. En bas.
Allez, va la voir.
Voilà, par ici. Oui.
Et regardez-moi là.
Voilà, comme ça, tournez-vous vers ici. Voilà.
Regardez ici, au milieu, Vincent.
Ok, là, on va. Nora and Olivier, that's picture.
Voilà. Un pas en avant. Voilà, stop. Voilà,
Ensemble ici au milieu, s'il
par
vous
ici,
plaît.
s'il vous plaît. Ici.
Regarde au milieu.
Lynn. Olivier, voilà, Nora, voilà, tous les trois ici.
Et ici au milieu, s'il vous plaît. Olivier, levez la tête.
Les trois.
Olivier, on le voit.
À la gauche, right leg. Et juste ici.
Et tous les trois ensemble au milieu.
Voilà,
s'il vous plaît.
comme ça, avec les
Ensemble au
têtes
milieu,
posées,
non,
comme
on
ça.
a que pour lui. Ensemble au milieu, s'il vous plaît.
Super. Voilà, regardez par ici.
Olivier, s'il vous plaît. Lynn avec.
Ciao.
Merci beaucoup.
Donc, vous allez reconnaître
In competition in Berlin, the famous French director Olivier Assayas, a three-time participant in Cannes without winning a Palme d'Or yet, now in Berlin with Hors du temps. It's April 2020, a reminder of the lockdown period. Together with their partners, two brothers, one a film director, the other a music journalist, spent the lockdown together in their childhood home. And everything reminds them of the past during this unreal time. Consternation and irritation spread, an inspection of one's own life. Coming up, the press conference for this French competition entry.
C'est mes chaussettes.
Tu as commandé sur Amazon?
Oui.
Tu connais les conditions de travail navrantes dans les entrepôts d'Amazon? Je t'apprends rien. Et là, tu as besoin de chaussettes.
Exactement, oui.
On sera bientôt en mai, t'es confiné depuis 2 mois. L'été arrive et tu as besoin de chaussettes.
Tout à fait, oui.
D'accord. D'accord. Tu peux pas les acheter dans un magasin?
Non, parce que les magasins sont fermés.
Non, mais quand ils seront ouverts.
Quand ils seront ouverts, ça sera trop risqué d'y aller. Et puis de toute façon, il n'y a pas les chaussettes que je veux dans les magasins.
Ah, mais c'est des falques. Mais on trouve partout, ça.
Non, désolé, pas ce modèle.
Excuse-moi, pardon, je suis en train de faire mon cours de danse sur Zoom. J'ai vu que tu avais récupéré le carton qui est arrivé ce matin.
Oui, exact, oui.
Bah, ça serait pas mes cracottes sans gluten par hasard?
Ah bah non, ce sont mes chaussettes.
Ils sont chiants, ça fait 1 semaine que je les ai commandés. Bon, je vous dérange pas plus, mon cours est pas terminé.
Good afternoon. Et bonjour, puisque cette
Good afternoon, because this press conference is going to be held in French. I would like to extend a very warm welcome to you. We're going to have a discussion on the film Suspended Time in the competition section. It will be screened in the Berlinale Palace tonight. I would like to present the guests. We will start from the very left.
3 décennies déjà, il évolue avec souplesse entre le théâtre et le cinéma.
He works in theatre, cinema. It is Michal Lesko, having worked for many years in these fields.
Elle est humoriste, autrice.
She's a comedian and she is an actress, of course. It's her 3rd term that she works together with Olivier Assayas, Noura Hamzavi.
Sont évoqués dans Hors du temps sa jeunesse cinéphile.
And in suspended time, his childhood is mentioned, and he is portraying his love for cinema. He's talking about his profession. It's his first time in competition here in Berlin. Olivier Assayas. She's a theatre actress, and she also represents Morgane in the film Nine d'Urso.
Figure essentielle de la vie culturelle française.
An important character from French culture in theatre, in camera, and it is the 3rd time that he has worked together with Olivier Assayas. A very warm welcome to Vincent Macaigne. One of the most active French producers. He's been doing films for more than 20 years and did a famous film in 2015. I think this is the first cooperation with Olivier Assayas. A very warm welcome to Olivier Delbosque. I'm going to start, but please feel free to raise your hand if you've got a question. I will start with a question to Olivier Assayas. Maybe you can tell us about the context. How did you write the film and how did it take shape? Well, let's say the circumstances were particular ones because I wrote it at the end of the first lockdown. And I didn't write it like a script or like a screenplay because I wasn't sure at the beginning that it would be a film. I started writing, it was more like sketches that I was taking during this period of the lockdown. And I tried to be as realistic as possible in my writings. Well, how can I put it? I wanted to write down the emotions that I had during this period of time because I lived in this house and I was a child back then in the house. I was surprised by the way when I came back to this house, and gradually I wrote down the scenes which represented what I experienced back in my childhood. It was about the relationship with my brother as well. And rather soon I started doing a film. It was more autobiographical than any other film I had done. It was taking shape gradually, and I had to get used to the idea to shoot this film because I was a bit intimidated by the idea. I am doing the Irma Web series as well now, and it was finalized already. So I kind of started with this film all of a sudden. I think there's a question over there. Good afternoon, Malik Makania. I work for Switzerland. Mr. Assayas, I am going to ask a question to you. It is about the relationship of the two brothers, and it is highlighted in the film. They seem to be a little bit lost with regard to the references they've got. I wanted to know, or let's say, I couldn't see too much derision. Well, it's about two people who grew up together in a different world, which is a world that doesn't exist any longer. It's not about that knowledge. It's about what has been forgotten, rather. There were things which characterized their lives. They seem to be important, but they don't mean anything for the next generation because that doesn't evoke any feedback in them. It's about this, rather. I would like to seize the opportunity and ask a question to Misha. So, as to prepare the role, did you have to meet the brother of Olivier? Maybe it was an honor as well to... No, I haven't met him, but I knew his radio programs. I was listening to that, and I knew that. I met him afterwards, and it's true, I did not try to imitate him, but I was very honored to play that part, of course. I was also looking into rock music, so I had some knowledge about him already, and that's thanks to what he's doing on the radio. Good afternoon. It's a very beautiful film. I've discovered it. It's also about love, but I've got a question. We were talking about the script of the film. It's not really a feature film script, as you said. Maybe you can talk about how you shot the film, how did you do it with comedians, how did you get adapted to the roles? I think this is rather a question for Nora or Neen. Before I will answer your question, I wanted to answer your question over there, because I think it is a crucial one. I've got the feeling that when talking about the past, I don't know, maybe this is because when you turn 40 or when you become a mother, then you start talking about the past, about when you were a teenager, for instance. And I also talked a lot about myself, how was it like in the old times. And I thought and still think that the world has changed significantly. We thought a lot about the past because there were these conditions of the lockdown and they were completely different, depended on where you were. You didn't have images, you didn't have internet in the past. And when talking about self-derision, well, sense of humor is always something very personal. But I can feel it and I'm really passionate about what I tell my son. And I think you can feel this in the film. The character of Carol is like a counterweight. Sometimes she says, I'm not interested in this. She lives her life. It's important to talk about this period of time. And if you're about 40, then you're like between two generations. And I have to adapt myself if I talk to younger people or older people. And I think this is also a story about these generations. And sorry, I forgot the other question, but maybe I'll give the floor to Nine so that she can take the floor. It wasn't only a fiction and it wasn't 100% reality what you could see in the film, but I think when writing the script, it was also a very particular situation. When we were doing the film with Olivier, we were surrounded by the objects which were touched or had been touched by the real people at the time. So these were the circumstances, and I think one had to try and try to show this kind of dance between the objects which had already existed, and they had this power stronger than us, and we had to try and find our space in this environment of objects. So a very delicate situation. Maybe Vincent, you want to say something. How did you find your place, your space? Maybe you talked also to Olivier when shooting the film? Well, I think that the film is very beautiful because, as a matter of fact, it is very intimate. At the same time, there's a lot of derision, a sense of humor for oneself shown by Olivier. There's a certain type of distance to the reality, though. And as a matter of fact, I got inspiration from Olivier, of course. And Olivier is the director directing me, of course, but it is also about one's imagination. And I always have the impression that I can put some derision or some fantasy, some imagination into the character. But as a matter of fact, this is a film about a certain period of time, which is the lockdown. But I think this film is still universal because it really addresses dreams, the dreams about cinema, maybe. And it is also about confinement, being housebound together with other people, being confined there, and to also bequeath something to one's children. There's this scene in the car, maybe you've seen the film. If you haven't seen the film, I can explain it to you. There is a scene in the film where I stop the car, well, not me, but my character, and then I start talking in the car. And this is part and parcel of the history of Olivier when he told something to the daughter. Sorry if I'm talking about this, but I think that this is very emotional and this helped me throughout the film. We have not talked about this yet. But this he shows his books and photographs, he shows how his brother and father and mother were. It's also about these two women. So everything that he's surrounded by at a certain moment in time, it's like a portrait or a photograph of a specific moment in time. And this is given to his daughter. And this entails all this imagination, a lot of paradoxes and sense of humor as well. This is shown in the film.
Olivier, est-ce que... Oui, oui. Non,
I think there's a question over there. No, I wanted to give the floor to you because I've got a question.
Vous avez le sentiment d'avoir transformé cette
Do you have the impression that you've transformed this house and furniture and objects whilst you were shooting the film? I don't know. Maybe you kind of give peace to it, or maybe these things have changed after the film? Well, it's very difficult to answer that question, which is a crucial one, of course. I can't really answer that question. I don't know. Before doing the film, I was a little bit afraid of ghosts because it's not my house. It's neither the house of my brother. It's the house of my father and mother. They live there. Their spirits can be felt there. And, well, it's true. I was watching the film and I was watching the surroundings. And I take a look at it in a different way than other people, because if I see the objects, I can feel, and I remember my father and my mother. It is a comedy, but still, it's a comedy for everybody, I believe. Basically speaking, it's also about mourning. So this is something which is closely linked to mourning, more so than anything else. Well, the question is rather whether I'm at peace with this mourning. Maybe, I don't know. I think it is important that time passes, and then when I go into this house, maybe I can feel it differently. I have to see whether this is the case. I think it is too early for me to answer that question. Thank you very much. Yeah, there's a question over there.
Hi, I'll ask it in English because I understand everything that you are speaking in French, but I still can't speak that well myself. First of all, thank you for this beautiful movie full of love and art and like reimagining of the COVID situation. I've got a bit philosophical question. Now, like at the time when the wars are raging and the refugees crisis are here, the pandemic seems like a bit of yesterday's news, but we just discussed it with my colleagues, that before we sort of bearbeiten, like process their pandemic situation and the psychotrauma it made on the whole planet, we cannot move further to processing like war and other stuff, because basically, it all started with the pandemic, in a way. I mean, this crazy situation in the world. So my question is to the whole team, how important for you personally was this story in terms of coming to terms with the effects of pandemic on your life as artists? And sub-question to Vincent, was it like a perk or a challenge for you when you were basically playing the alter ego of Olivier? Like, yeah, thank you.
Ce qui est difficile, c'est...
Well,
it's
not really a film about COVID or lockdown. I think COVID is just a pretext to make a comedy. I think if one day I make a serious film about the pandemic, I wouldn't tell it that way. It's rather a film about four people who are confined, enclosed together. They didn't ask for it, but given the circumstances, they are confined together. It's about how they find a way to understand one another, to be with one another, and maybe then what pops up is the past. I think we interact with the past, with our own past in particular, and this is a question which is important to everybody, and everybody is affected by this issue. And I hope that this is something universal that can be felt in the film. When doing the film, I had the feeling that there was an environment which was characterized by a sense of humor. And this is the way, I was very afraid. During the lockdown, I was very afraid, and this is ridiculed a little bit with hindsight. But the question about my relationship with the past, well, this is what I've tried to explain just a little while ago.
C'était un défi.
Well, you were asking about a challenge, whether it was a challenge. It's difficult to answer. It's neither a perk nor a challenge. The scripts by Olivier are always very well written, and I am being carried by this. I'm helped by this script, like all of us, I believe. So it was rather straightforward. You could feel this imagination, this fantasy in the film. It was great to meet Nina. I already knew Nora, and to meet Misha as well. And this helped me a great deal in the work for the film. I would like to add something. In one way or another, it is a very autobiographical film. So I used autobiographical elements in the film, but in reality, it's a film which is transformed by the interpreters, the characters, the actors. So what comes into being is the relationship between the four people in the film. And obviously, this is no longer autobiographical then, because something else is coming into being. It's portrayed by the actors in the film. They kind of reinvent their characters, and I'm the first one watching this transformation. So you don't buy on Amazon all the time? Well, I try not. Well, I try not to any longer to stop.
Oui, allez-y.
Yes, over to you.
Hello, my name is Mahari Segit, African Refugee News. First, I want to make a compliment. Yesterday, while I was writing about the film, I cannot say everything, I wrote, Truffaut is dancing in his grave, because this is a French film, really. From a long, long time, I've not seen such a film, with the dialects, the countryside. And then I said, when a man can make out of a tragedy a comic, he's Charlie Chaplin. No, really, because because it was a tragedy, COVID, for us also journalists. We couldn't work, Of course. But my question is for the crew. There are a lot of dialogues, but there are also nice things like when he was washing the pot, cleaning the pot. How did you get this? Because it's magic.
How many takes? Qui répond?
Who would like to answer that? It was about cleaning the pot.
C'est écrit dans le scénario.
Well, it was included in the script, but you know that, don't you?
Comment est venu ces idées de texte?
Well, it was in the text. Yes, it was about Nora in the scene as well. What can we do with the pot? It was burned. You're talking about the pot, aren't you? How to clean it? Well, we said maybe on the internet we find something.
I got it. Everyone. On disait qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire? Tu peux mettre du.
We said, what can we do? We can put baking soda into the pot, and this is included in the film. It was really funny. And she said in the film, well, I found something else on the internet. You can also throw away the pot, and that was really funny. Yes, but that's invented by Nora. But like many other things, by the way, the film is very written and very much invented on the spot. We've invented things, we added sentences to it. Because films are living organisms, they evolve, they develop, also thanks to the actors. It's something which I encourage as well. I try to provide a fertile ground so that the films can evolve. They are comedians as well, and sometimes I say, well, you can rearrange this or you can try out this or that. The screenplay should not be written in stone. Some things are pre-decided, of course, certain things which are included, set by Vincent. It's about emotions, it's very precise, etc. But when talking about everyday life, or if it's something in the comic vein, for instance, you can improvise, play it by ear, and like this, the scenes become more lively. It's a natural process. There's a question over there.
Yes, thank you. Sofia Kleftaki from the Goethe Institute in Athens, in Greece. So I have a question for Olivier and for Nora. It's a personal question. How do you think and how would you evaluate like cultural differences in coping within the lockdown and in the pandemic, because different countries had other conditions, like in Greece, where everyone was literally locked up in their homes. And of course, due to the financial crisis also in Greece, people of more than one generation were forced to live for more than a year together. But Greek culture copes anyways different with being with a lot of people, also on Sunday dinners and so on. So I would like you to comment a bit on that from your own multicultural background, how those differences influenced or even have an impact or a contrast within the movie. Thank you.
Well, you know, it's. I will let Nora answer on her side, but for me, it was. I think when you deal with something that everybody has shared all over the world, like a historical moment, you know, like something, you know. I mean, it's in my generation. It's the one moment when I've saw history in the making. It's something that had never happened before. We were not prepared for it, and the only way you can deal with it is show it exactly as you've seen it, as you've experienced it, not as other people experienced it. You can't make something that would make sense the same way in every single culture, because in every different country the pandemic has a different story and brings with it different issues, various issues. So I tried to be as close as I could to my own experience, and it's all there on the screen. I mean, everything is kind of exaggerated because it's a comedy and you have to underline things and to make it just lively and funny. But ultimately, it's all true. I mean, this is the way. This is my experience, and I'm kind of bringing it to you. I mean, to be honest, I thought there would be a flood of movies about pandemics, about the pandemic. I thought there would be one of the reasons I was not. I wrote this 3 years ago, and the reason why I was not making the film is because I thought that so many movies would pop up. But after a while, I realized that no movie was popping up. And nothing was. So I thought, oh, okay, so maybe I can try mine.
I think it was a real challenge. Non, en fait, je vais parler en français.
Ashley will speak in French.
Je peux en parler en français?
I can speak in French, right? Yes, of course.
Enfin, en tout cas, pour ma part, j'étais extrêmement angoissée, évidemment, pendant le confinement. On s'était échangé des messages avec Olivier.
And we exchanged messages with Olivier, and it was a very depressing time. And, well, we were protected in our families, of course, but we were very aware. I was in Paris, by the way, with my husband and my son during the lockdown period. But it was a very strange moment in time. As a comedian, I was asked, that, well, of course, I couldn't play, I couldn't be on stage, and the journalists, as was said, couldn't work, and this was the reality for all of us. So we decided to do a podcast for Vanity Fair and to write little stories and to tell narratives. At the beginning, I didn't want to join in because I thought, well, this is very complicated. Everybody who's in such a reality, well, how can you talk about this? How can you try to be universal when you know that there are people for whom it's worse than for others, who live in terrible conditions, others who have got a good life, have better conditions, some might have depressions, etc. So at the beginning I refused, and then I decided to write down things, and I thought, well, the only thing that we can do in these periods of time is to be very sincere and to not talk about the world, but to talk about one's own experience, which might be universal then, because at the end of the day we're all human beings, and you can write about things, we can write not about material things, but about emotions which might be blocked by what we all know. I did a direct show on France 3 on the French radio, and I did this for 1 hour. I talked about a text, I read out a text. For 1 hour I said we're all like rats in a laboratory or in a fish tank. It's a crazy situation. And I was really astonished. At the beginning I thought, well, can I do something like this? Maybe it's not a good idea to... And then I thought, well, no, I received a lot of messages from people who were on their own, alone, and they were really happy about it. I think it's one of the first things, well, sorry, I try not to talk at length, but it's a unique situation because it's like a mirror. It's, for example, I was asking myself what happens with my son. Usually they identify themselves with other children, and now he's all on his own. He is on his own every day. And how can I tell him this is not bad, this is not serious? How will he identify himself? And I wrote about it, and I did it on Guignol. It was a very funny thing. Well, to cut a long story short, I want to express that I think the best thing so as to remain universal in these complicated situations, since it's all very individual for everybody. So the best way is to be sincere and also to accept, to see that there is solitude in a lot of places. Thank you. We haven't heard the producer of the film. Olivier, maybe you can take the floor. There's a question. Or maybe you can say when you joined the project. What fascinated you? Well, it's a long time that I've wanted to work with Olivier, and I even expressed this. I told him several times. So it was a great experience, and in economic terms it was not easy to shoot. And well, I was very fascinated because he did the Irma web series before, and then this, and this was kind of a fresh view. I even felt rejuvenated as a producer with this new project, and it was really very nice to do something very light with this entire crew, with a team. And I was really very emotionally touched by the script. It is characterized by melancholy as well. Nostalgia can be found in the screenplay. And I, of course, have lived through the pandemic and the lockdown. And still, I was fascinated immediately by the script. And we didn't have a lot of money at the beginning, but we managed to shoot the film, and the team really did everything so as to realize this film. I wanted to take the floor. I think we should also talk about the nature in the film. We haven't mentioned this yet. And the nature is almost like a character in the film. And this is also something universal, because it's something which we are surrounded
parce que le temps passe trop vite.
Usually time passes too quickly in your everyday life, and there you can feel nature again. I think it's like as if nature took back its rights. This is an interesting dimension, and this is also a very universal dimension of the film. I would like to add something, because we're talking about the lockdown a lot, but as a matter of fact, the lockdown was an individual experience for everybody, even in this room here. Everybody lived through the lockdown in a very different way. What is touching and universal is not this confinement, this lockdown, and what the people lived through at the time, or how they see it. It's rather this moment when we are faced with our own history, our own past. And I believe Olivier's film, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, or you can say what you think about it, but I think his film is a film which is rather, well, it's not that the lockdown created the film, but it's like the lockdown is a break, a pause, and you can take a look at your own life. And I think this is beautiful and universal, because everybody, I didn't experience the same lockdown as you, for example, or like all the others. We've got the impression that everybody experienced it in the same way, but this is not true, because there are a lot of injustices to be found as well. What I think is very touching and beautiful, it's like Chekhov's pieces, for instance. This is this little moment of time when time is suspended, and when, well, when Olivier starts thinking about his own life, what he will give to his daughter, asking question about the own life, and with the contradictions and the paradox you can feel. And this is something that might be universal, to ask yourself questions about your own life. So this is something where there's the focus on the family, having lived in the house. Well, that was it. Sorry, I was a bit too long. Sorry.
Mahari, we're going to have to wrap up, so not a double question. Yeah?
I just wanted to, because he had Amazon, but you had to work. So what was the challenge to work in this film? You know, like writing, choosing the songs for other people in the lockdown. And then, very funny, Olivier, you meet Olivier. How did you meet? With Olivier or with the surnames?
Non, on s'appelait par le nom de nos personnages dans le film.
No, we used the characters' names, and I've known Vincent for a long time, but I never worked together with him. We were in the same field, more or less. We sometimes met early in the morning, we were talking to one another, and it was rather magic. I was very excited to do this film. I know it is not easy to show this brotherly relationship as an actor, but it was like a miracle. It worked right from the start. I had this feeling right from the start that it would work out well. It doesn't matter if you look alike the real persons, but it was this magic moment which meant that yes, well, these two boys grew up together. They had the same parents, and then I called Vincent. Vincent no longer used the character name, I think. Well, we were talking about whether I had to meet Mishka. No, it is my job as an actor to be credible and to portray the brother, and it was absolutely natural, a miracle. How was it to work, to play this character, to continue? Well, yes.
Le personnage de Vincent le vit un petit peu mieux.
Well, maybe the character of Vincent can deal with it better. I can't really deal with it properly. Well, for instance, I'm not happy to order things on Amazon every 10 minutes. I had to write, do my job. At the same time, it's very melancholic. It's about these singers being mentioned all the time. Well, thank you very much for your discussion. Thank you very much to you for having been here. Thank you very much for your attention.